website under meeting videos if you'd like to watch this program and the presenter tonight. Takes a few days, so give me till the end of the week. Just so you know too, Kathy and Mark are on a cruise, and so on a well-deserved vacation. So Kathy's not here. So tonight I've got assistance of Mike Shea is going to help with tonight's activity. So thank you to Mike. Appreciate that. And so to welcome our new members and guests, I want to call Barbara Summers, who's our membership chair, up front, so she can welcome our new folks.
Welcome. Good afternoon. Do I need a mic? I don't think so.
Presume maybe.
Yeah, there we go. Welcome. Wow, this is exciting. We have 6 guests, one that is signing in now, and 3 prospective members already tonight. Yes, we rock. All right.
Well,
I want to
30
remind you,
online,
if you
and I
did
can't
not
tell
sign in, please sign
whether
in
they're
at the
in
break.
person.
Last month I had trouble
I see 3 people
tracking
online.
everybody down. So if you didn't sign in, please do so. We have, like I said, 5 guests tonight. Our membership right now is at 148, 149. So we're going to go over 150 after tonight. So we're a growing club, and for a good reason. Bobby Hopman, are you here? She's okay. Hey, you know what? Today I know it's Bobby and not Bob. We're good, huh? I have a name tag for her. Okay. Let's see. Did we introduce Russell last month? Russell Wilder? No? How about Bill Harris? No, I guess that's it. All right. I've finished my little bit here. Welcome. Enjoy the program. Yes, you know what? Guests, raise your hands. Look around. Members, go say hi to these guys on break, okay? Thank you.
All right, welcome guests. We're happy to have you here. And hi to those out there in Zoom.
Looks like there's
We're glad
about
you're here too.
25.
All right, a few announcements. Let's see, starting with the Nevada County Fair. If you're interested in entering the photography exhibition, deadline is tonight. And with delivery August 6th. And the Camera Club sponsors what's called the Proud Tradition Award, which is really best of show for photography. Yes?
You ordered your photos and you didn't enter?
Oh, was the deadline 4 p.m., not midnight?
Oh, well. I blew it.
So George says he uploaded at 4:30 and it took it, so.
Maybe you should do it right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, give it a go if you haven't. Okay, and so the waving in the back is our presenter has just arrived. So welcome, John. We'll let him catch his breath. Glad you're here. All right, next announcement is that if you've been with the club for a while, you might have been familiar on our webpage. There was one of the links down the right-hand side that said edit your profile. And you could go in and change your name, your phone number, your email. That was taken down because we were working, it's not we, it's Dave Arstein, is working to improve the back end of the website and to make it more efficient and easier to manage our membership. And so we've done some work on that. He has. It's much cleaner now, one record for each person. And so that feature has now or will be soon up on the club's webpage. Dave Arstein will send out an email that explains to you if you ever do need to go change your phone number or change your email, you'll be able to do it yourself. Previously, you would have to send an email to me or to Dave Arstein or to the membership person to ask for any of your personal information to be changed. You'll now be able to do it on your own. So, very exciting. All right, next announcement is the board is proposing a change to the club's bylaws. And the reason I bring it in front of you, anytime the bylaws are changed, it does require a vote of those present in a meeting. And so for tonight, I share with you the proposed change, and then next meeting, we will actually vote on that proposed change. So the board is proposing to change the deadline for annual dues, which currently is the 3rd meeting of the year. So the March meeting is when your annual dues are due. And because of the number, we've had quite a number over the last several years of late payments, which requires the treasurer and the membership person to have to chase down folks. It's not that they didn't mean to re-enroll. It's a very gracious 3-month window. And so what the board is hoping is that we tighten that up a little bit and make the deadline the second meeting of the year, or February, that we can get folks to pay in a more timely fashion and reduce the amount of work that it takes to get folks reinstated after they've been dropped. Yes? We would love it by the end of the year. It's a calendar year payment, so yeah, December 31st is really the end of the calendar year. Members are allowed currently till the third meeting, or our March meeting, and we're proposing to move that to February, which we think 60 days, thereabouts. Okay? So if you have questions, shoot me an email, and then we'll talk about it more at the next meeting and take a vote of those present. All right. Next, I want, Sheila could not be with us. She's our exhibition chair. And so Yolanda, I'm trying to think, we've had a couple of folks who have very graciously volunteered to help. Is Yolanda on Zoom? Is Yolanda on Zoom? Does she want to speak for exhibitions? I'm not hearing her. Okay. Okay. Well, if she has something or somebody wants to share something later, we can do that. All right, next one. David Wong, I know, has several announcements. And you want me to give you the mic?
So, first announcement is we're having a club field trip at the county fair. So it's Wednesday night, I don't remember what date, the first, that's August 10th, I think it is. And we're going to meet at the exhibition hall where the photography is at 6 o'clock. So any of you that would like to come, there's no sign-ups for it, it's just show up and we're going to shoot, night stuff at the fair. And we did that before and it was a lot of fun. So bring your cameras, your tripods, your remote shutter releases, and just meet us there at the building at 6 o'clock. Bill Wages is organizing that, and he and I will both be there. So that's announcement number one. Number two, next month, not next month, September, at Viewpoint, I'm curating a show for our own Kathy Triolo. She has a wonderful show that you will be surprised that you will see many members of the camera club there incognito in her photos. And it's a fantasy kind of photos, and you should go see it. It starts the second weekend in September. But if you go to viewpoint.com, you'll see the dates for that. And then along with that Viewpoint, I have a workshop at Viewpoint on drone photography, August 6th. It's getting to be full. If you're interested in drone photography, I'd encourage you to come and sign up, but you have to sign, it's not a camera club function, but it's a Viewpoint. Those of you that don't know Viewpoint Photographic Art Center in Sacramento, and it'll be 9 to 2 in the afternoon, and we'll have the DJI, the brand new Mini 3, and we'll have the Mavic 3, both those at the workshop and for demo, and we'll do some flying out in the field afterwards. Let's see, what else was there? At the photo, okay, Henry asked, where are we meeting? We're meeting at the county fairgrounds, 6 p.m. at the exhibition hall where all the photography is. So we're just going to meet there. There's no sign-ups for it, just show up. Yeah, Tall Pines, I think is what it is. And it's informal, but we'll have a lot of fun. And if you need some instruction, there'll be plenty of us that can help with instruction there. let's see, what else was there? Oh, lastly, I guess there's some photos in the back that I put there. And since it seems like everybody is traveling now, I hear Finland, I know we just got back from Costa Rica, and then a couple months before that we were in Ireland. So I thought to celebrate, I put up some photos from 2 workshops to Ireland. We had a lot of club members there, and then the one to Costa Rica where we just got back. We had a lot of club members there, and if you have questions about Costa Rica, Josh Miller is right here. He and I were roommates together there. But Josh can tell you everything you want to know about Costa Rica, and he's got his photos up there. I think that's it.
Thank you, David. And then I believe there's an announcement also from Grace. So I don't see Grace. Is Grace on Zoom?
I am on Zoom. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, so I just
Hey,
wanted
Grace, I think you're muted.
am I still muted?
I hear you now.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, my voice is also a little gone. I'm just recovering from COVID actually, so sorry I can't be there, but I just wanted to share that I'm going to be the featured artist for the Grass Valley Courtyard Suites in August. So I'm putting together a solo show. This is my first, so I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm also excited. And it's going to be running through the month of August, and we're going to have an artist reception on August 9th. So that's the day before the field trip. So if anyone's free on Tuesday evening, August 9th, we would have a little reception. And the show will feature, I focused on works that I've taken just around the area in the region in the last few years. So it's very local focused. So I hope we'll get to see some of you there. And if you have any questions, you can email me or call. My number's in the directory and my email. So thanks.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Grace. She's a newer member of the club, and she has really gotten some really exciting work. So I'm excited for her. All right. Any other announcements before we move to the presentation? Yes, Jonathan.
I have an exhibition at Edward Jones until September. If you want to come and have a look, help yourself.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, our presenter made it. I'm so happy to see you. And so to introduce our keynote presenter tonight, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mike Shea.
Good evening. So our presenter tonight is John Ehrenfeld? Ehrenfeld, thank you. Sorry about that. So John was born and raised in New York City and attended the High School of Music and Art. After college, John became a film and video producer and started his own company in Los Angeles, where it prospered for 2 decades. Photography, which was once a hobby, turned into a passion and helped shape the path John would take going forward. John lives in Napa County, which accounts for his long drive here, and thank you for coming all that way, and has been totally dedicated to the photographic arts, particularly nature and wildlife photography. He is currently working on his first book titled Silently Into the Wind. John has shot for numerous organizations and publications. He is a licensed tour operator and conducts private and group wildlife photo tours and also teaches photography. John is a Nikon Professional Services member and a jurist for the North American Nature Photography Association. His photos have been published by Audubon, Wild Lens, and Wild Hope magazines, Ojai Raptor Center, Central Valley Birds, International Bird Rescue, and many others. He was a keynote speaker at the 2021 Napa Photographers Association, the 2022 Winter Bird Festival, and the 2022 North American Nature Photography Association webinar. John's prints are for sale through his website, so be sure to check them out. Please give a warm welcome to John.
So we were sitting there for quite a while, but I hope they're okay. Let's see here. Good? Okay, good. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I really appreciate it. I have to give a shout out to my friend Bob back there who attended one of my workshops where we met. Bob's, I'm sure you all know, is a great photographer and a really good guy, and I think he recommended me as a speaker, so thank you, Bob. We're Facebook friends too, but what we talk about won't be talked about here. Before I get started, I wanted to mention something that is probably not necessary to say to you folks, but I just do it everywhere I speak, and that's ethics. This is the most important thing to me. No photograph is worth harming or disturbing an animal or breaking the law by trespassing on private property. And I don't know how many of you have experienced it, but it just is awful what I've seen, and it should stop, but it really doesn't. So being respectful of the wildlife you're trying to photograph and any persons you may see, don't disturb the animal. If it moves or flushes, you're too close. So it's very tempting when there's an owl sitting there to try to go up there close to it to get a closer shot. And closer is not always better, but people think it is. So it causes them to flush and fly. And this behavior can cause stress, low reproductive success, nest abandonment, and many other problems. And the animal's welfare matters far more than your photograph, which most people put online for a day and then they never look at it again. So I'm sure you all agree with that. It's also a safety issue too. You know, I've seen people make U-turns in the middle of highways. They see an eagle sitting on a post, they jump out, the car's half sticking out in the road. It's just, it's just a photograph. Okay, so I'm going to talk tonight about how to find wildlife. I've always had a reputation, undeserved or not, that when I go out for a day, I usually come home with a lot of different shots of wildlife, and people always wonder, how do you do that? And I've kind of summed it up over the years with this golden rule: success is directly commensurate with the effort that one puts in. It's not magic, as most of you know, and it just doesn't happen. You have to put a lot of work into it. And the work you put in will result in success. That's almost guaranteed, but you have to put the work in. So if you want to be a successful wildlife photographer, and I do make my living doing it, you really need to have the requisite knowledge and a passion for it. If you're not passionate about it and you're not willing to put in the time to learn what you need to learn, you're going to be a weekend photographer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you really love it and you want to either make a living doing it, or it's your art form, you really have to be prepared to make an effort, and I mean an effort. So it's not easy, and it takes commitment and a willingness to put the time in. That's not to say that a casual weekend photographer can't find wildlife and get some great shots and have fun doing it, but that's the exception, not the rule, and there's a great deal of luck involved. Modern equipment is great. Everybody is wonderful. It's wonderful if you can get the latest Sony or Nikon or mirrorless and great lenses, but if you can't find the wildlife you're interested in photographing, it really doesn't do you much good. Tonight, I'm not going to talk much about exotic locations like Africa or the Arctic and Europe, and Costa Rica. We all go there because the wildlife is wonderful and it's different. But I'm going to concentrate instead on what a photographer can achieve locally in their area without spending a lot of money many don't have, or sometimes it's a time issue or a COVID issue. So most of my focus will be on birds because they're more plentiful. There are hundreds of varieties, and mammals are just harder to find. Interestingly enough, as most of you know, California used to have a huge population of grizzly or brown bears. Now they don't exist here, which is unfortunate, but probably for the best. So it's not impossible. I mean, up here you probably have bears, right? And you have bears, and we don't have them. We have some in Napa, but not a lot. But the northern forests are home to black bears, fox, mountain lions, bobcats, weasels, deer, skunk, raccoons, pronghorns, sheep, and every other small creature you can think of, including wildlife that live in and around water, like beavers, mink, otters, etc. So, that having been said, there are 7 items that I consider integral to and important to being successful in finding wildlife. And if you want to stop, I'll stop after each. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll be happy to try to answer them. So first one is research and planning. And I know a lot of you know this, but that's what I was going to speak on, and hopefully you'll learn something. Word of mouth is always helpful, as is networking. Talking to friends, asking questions. Some people are very generous with telling people that they trust where to find certain species. Others have rigorous rules where they don't want to say anything. I particularly am protective of species which I call, it's dangerous to disturb them, like nesting bald eagles, owls. There's a lot of instances where eagles will abandon their nest and even their young if they're disturbed over and over. And there's unfortunately a case recently where a group of insistent photographers got too close, flushed an owl, and there were raptors watching, and they came and their babies didn't make it. So, it goes back to respecting wildlife. But research, so word of mouth is helpful. Join a Facebook group or a local photo group like this one. And online listservs are very helpful. I'm sure you have one up here. They're usually by county, Solano County, Napa County, Placer County, and they list sightings and things like that. Google's your friend here. There's so much valuable information online. The issue is discerning what is not accurate and what is accurate. But in terms of getting a good basic understanding of a species, where they live, what their habits are, and again, your success is directly commensurate with what you put in. I love it, so I'll spend hours and hours reading about peregrine falcons and where they nest and what their habits are, and that really pays off, not only in terms of finding the birds, but once you find them, to anticipate what they're going to do, how they're going to act, what they're eating, how much time do they perch. Bald eagles will perch for 4 or 5 hours. They'll sit on a branch, and a lot of people don't have the patience to wait for them to do something or fly. And so it really is important to know your species. And the more knowledge you have, the better off you'll be. eBird in particular, which everybody knows is good, but I don't put too much emphasis on it. I have some issues with them allowing people to post delicate locations, like they allow posting of owls, and when they're asked to disallow that, they refuse. So I have mixed feelings about them, but there's no question that eBird is a good start, okay? A lot of information's not accurate, and what they don't tell you is a lot of the birders on there, a lot of the people who report on eBird are serious birders. So they've trained themselves to recognize bird calls. So when they put down they saw 3 blue grosbeaks, they probably heard them and didn't see them. So for a photographer, that's, that doesn't really mean too much. But it does tell you they're in the area. A helpful thing to do that I really do a lot is to call wildlife refuges, national and state parks, and talk to a ranger or someone with knowledge of the wildlife in their area. I do that up at Klamath. I do it at SAC here at Calusa. Get to know the people. They're very nice. They're usually bored sitting there. They don't get too many phone calls, and if you're nice and and just want to, tap their brain. They're very helpful, and they'll kind of tell you what's going on. There's a woman at the Yolo Bypass, been there 35 years. She knows a lot. As a matter of fact, she was the one that told me 3 years ago, she goes, God, the strangest thing, all of a sudden, there's all these short-eared owls out by Rice Point. They're all over the place. I go, you're kidding me. I never see short-eared owls here. Sure enough, I went out there the next day, and they were all over the place. And soon, word got out, and but for about 2 weeks, it was fantastic. So if I hadn't have talked to her and stayed in touch with her, I even bring her croissants sometimes. She's a very nice old lady, and so they're very helpful, though. The manager up at Klamath that manages all 6 refuges, name is John. He just gave me a dire report on water, but we won't talk about that. It's going to be interesting this fall in terms of migratory birds. There's SAC had their water supply cut, SAC NWR in Klamath, and it's really going to be difficult, and they're worried about avian cholera with small amounts of water and large numbers of birds because they have nowhere to go. So calling wildlife refuges, talking to people is a good thing to go. One example of that is one of the lesser-known refuges, but it's huge, and it's off the beaten path, is Merced, which is in Central California. In February, there are thousands and thousands of sandhill cranes and snow geese and Ross's geese and ducks and just everything you can imagine. It's a wonderful place. It's large. There's owls. It's terrific. Well, at the end of February, the cranes and the snow geese stay there longer because they know that they're going to cut the corn. They grow corn in 3 fields adjacent to it's actually in the reserve. So I always call them and ask them when they're going to cut the corn. So they tell you when they're going to cut the corn. You go there the next day, the birds are going crazy. They're flying in and out. It's a wonderful experience. So that's, stay in touch, keep a calendar. I keep an Excel spreadsheet when I saw certain birds at what time of the year. I've kept it for 5 years now. So I know when the migration is going to be northbound, southbound, what birds are at, where. So knowledge is a good thing. So I also recommend researching the weather, particularly wind and fog, before you go. I personally like Weather Underground, but I'm more interested in fog than anything else, especially, as you know, in the winter. I don't know about up here, but in the valley and on the coast, where I shoot a lot, it's a problem. So there's an incredible app that everybody has an incredible app. This one really is incredible. It's called Clear Outside, and I would recommend if anybody here know about that app? Clear Outside is extremely accurate. You put in your location, and it has all these categories clearly laid out, green and red from 1 to 10, and it included is fog, dew point. The fog is fantastic. So it'll say from 7 to 10, it's a 3, and it's red, so that means there's going to be fog. And then it'll show you when the fog's going to lift. And it's uncanny. It's usually within an hour because I check it out. I went to Bodega Bay last week, used it, really pea soup fog, just like it said, and it lifted right when they said. So, like a lot of things having to do with the weather, it's not perfect, but it's far and away the best app I've ever used. So I'd recommend, it's called Clear Outside. So that's kind of the research thing. Anybody, any comments or questions? I'm sure a lot of you knew all that. When? Again, this is common knowledge, but takes commitment. Get out early and late, specifically a couple of hours either side of sunrise and sunset. Now, everyone knows that golden hour makes for beautiful light, and light is so important in photography. We all know that too. But it's also the wildlife is more active. When they wake up, they're going to go eat. That's what wildlife do. They spend their lives looking for sustenance, and So you'll have a much greater success rate going early. A lot of people don't like to do it. I have to drive quite a ways sometimes, so I get up at 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, and I love it. You know, if I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. But that goes back to the passion and commitment part of it. I like to get there before the sun rises, make sure I check my equipment, check my settings. I've made that mistake. You go out and you put all this work in, there's the wildlife, and oh my God, I'm on single point and I want to be on continuous. And so I always check my settings and make sure I'm as prepared as I can be. So going early and late is a good rule of thumb. During the midday hours, wildlife is less active, and also the overhead light is harsh shadows. It's directly overhead. You get highlights that are blown out, shadows that are too deep. It's just not an attractive kind of light for wildlife or anything. And it's a good time for lunch or a nap in your car because you got up at 2 a.m. But if you want to shoot macro photography where you have more control, is something you can do. You can bring just a small black piece of oak tag or an art card, or set up a little something, or if you're under some foliage, you don't even need that. But flowers, bees, butterflies, dragonflies, spider webs, small lizards, it's a great way to kill a couple of hours. And if you have the right lens, if you have a macro lens, like I'm a Nikon shooter, the 105 2.8 is, I just think it's fantastic. And you come back with a flying bee, or it's something to do during the middle of the day. Also, thick cover or canopies of trees are good places to shoot, and be creative. The wonderful thing about the digital world, some of us, the film days, it's one of the wonderful things about it is there are no mistakes. You shoot it, if it doesn't come out, delete it, but experiment, shoot counterintuitively. If you want to have the sun behind you, shoot some backlit, shoot into the sun, try to see what kind of effects you can get. Once you know the basics of your camera, it's important to know your equipment, but once you know your equipment and what it can do, then that's where the creative part, the artistic part comes in. And you can like a golfer, it will tell you if they're reviewing all the things they learned when they took lessons before they swing, it doesn't work. If they let their mind go and just rely on instinct and just do it, they're much more successful. When you get to that point in photography where you don't even have to think about your aperture, your shutter speed, you're confident. Confidence is what I'm getting at. Then be creative. And some of the best shots I've seen are, wow, I never would have looked at it that way. And that's what makes it art. So anyway, a little off track, but so during the spring northbound and fall southbound migration, as you know, millions of birds are on the move. And California, and right here, lies right in the middle of the Pacific Flyway, from the Pacific Ocean to the Rockies, and from Mexico to northern Canada. North to south, it's 4,000 miles long, and in places 1,000 miles wide. These flyways are like atmospheric rivers that birds follow to travel between their breeding grounds in the north and winter homes in the south. And again, they migrate because of food. When the lakes freeze up north, they go south to where the water's open, and the eagles follow the ducks, and that's the cycle of life and nature, the way they all work together. So
what is with all the changing weather patterns, how is that affecting the migration? Is there a kind of a general pattern that's happening?
Unfortunately, a lot. And again, when I talked to John up at Klamath, who manages all 5 refuges, the Bureau of Reclamation is the one that decides how much water is released to who. And they have to take into account farmers, big agriculture, birds, and they just purportedly try to do the best they can, but nobody's ever happy because you're dividing up a pie that's shrinking and shrinking, so you're getting a smaller and smaller piece of the pie. I'll give you some specific examples. Talking to somebody in the know, most of you are familiar with the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge. 2 years ago, they get allocated water, and the rice farmers adjoining them get allocated water. And they flood the rice fields, and the birds come in, and they feed on the rice, and they nest in the refuge at night. They roost there for protection, and then they fly in the morning, and that's the way it works. Last year, they got 75% of their previous year's water allotment, so they lost 25%. You could see it when you went there. There were parts, I've been there so many times. It's an auto tour route, hiking trails, for those of you that don't know, and there were a lot of birds still, lots of birds. I'm talking about 40, 50,000 snow geese, but they were more widely dispersed. It was just different. There was less water. A lot of the water didn't fill in places where there was. The bad news, and I hope to God I'm wrong, I'm not wrong, that's what they told me, but hopefully something will change, is that this coming fall migration system, to get to your question, they're getting 18% of what they got last year. And they're terribly worried about avian cholera, because when large groups of birds frequent a small puddle, so to speak, they're very, very prone and susceptible to disease. A couple of years ago, there was a bad outbreak, and they had to hire somebody to just go pick up dead ducks. So there's a lot to worry about. There's not much anybody can do about it. If it doesn't feel like it's going to rain in August and September and October, all the vernal ponds, which a lot of small groups of wildlife frequent, are gone. You know what vernal ponds are? They're ponds that have no water source at all except for rain. So when it rains, they fill up. When it stops raining, they evaporate and they're dry. So most all vernal ponds are dry. And there are some, like, let me think, Calusa is a little better off from what they say. I don't know why. Llano Seco is much better off. Do you guys know Llano Seco, the wildlife refuge? Some of you do. It's a really great place for bald eagles, snow geese, sandhill cranes, a lot. I mean, it was a great two platforms there, a lot of nice people, photographers. It's like a club, friendly, informal club. They get their water from the river, from the Sacramento River, and that's controlled by a farmer who they've worked out a deal with, a big rancher that that got the pre-1913 rights. I'll just say really quickly, there's 3 water rights in California. There's pre-19-something, there's post-19-something, and then there's riparian rights. Like the Yolo bypass has riparian rights. That means that they're going to get more water than other people, and some people have no rights, some don't have any rights at all. So if you watch the movie Chinatown, that was the start of it, but water in California is extremely political. It's extremely complex. There's old treaties, there's constant legal action, and unfortunately birds and other mammals too are on the short end of the stick. And there's so many good people that are out there trying their best, lobbying, contributing, a lot of wealthy people in the Bay Area that are trying their best to lobby. There's a lobbying group that started up in Washington, but the Bureau of Reclamation has a horrible job, and I don't know what's going to happen. It's just not the best news, right? So, but everybody's worried about that. Water is critically important to wildlife. Most birds don't drink. They get their water from their prey, but their prey for the larger birds are water birds, like dunlins and sandpipers and things like that. So it's tough. So we talked about the flyways, and again, August to September, starting in a week or two. Nobody knows how climate change is going to affect that. Could be early, could be late. We're all anxious to find out. the birds are on their way, and from the north to the south. And you'll be seeing them if you go into forested regions, your backyard. I'm sure you've seen them all before and photographed some of them. That's when you see some rarities that are off track. You see beautiful colored birds like all sorts of flycatchers and warblers. And, it's really a great time of the year if you like chasing little birds. So that's going to happen now. And then right on their heels will come the big birds coming in from the north. The sandhill cranes, snow and Ross's geese, cackling geese. A lot of them come from snow geese come from Wrangel Island, which is in Russia. And there's some real interesting things online if you're interested to see where they come from. So it's kind of cool to look at, and some of them are banded, and you'll look at some and think, wow, they flew all the way from Russia. And every once in a while, you'll get like a very unique species that you just see wandering around some wetland. And a lot of people come in, word spreads among serious birders, and it could be from Siberia or from China. It's just every once in a while you just marvel at how these birds just show up. So we're now entering prime migration months in August, September. So that's about where. Any questions or? Okay, when? Where? Nature reserves are designed to attract wildlife. When they're like golf courses are laid out a certain way, people in the know build nature reserves. It's generally with the right foliage and water sources. So nature reserves are a great place to see wildlife. Local parks and gardens, can't overemphasize that. Just your local little pocket corner park, forests, the coast, rivers and lakes, national state parks, any predominantly rural area with trees, bushes, water, etc. But don't discount urban areas as well. There's birds can show up in any tree in any busy street corner, so don't ignore that. Let's see, backyards. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There was an interesting program the other night about birds in Manhattan and how they're roosting up in the skyscrapers.
Right. Right. Peregrine falcons.
Peregrine falcons.
Yeah. Okay. They like ledges on skyscrapers. I mean, they nest on cliffs. So that's, urban cliffs are, like that. They're incredible birds. Fastest animal on earth, and I've been lucky to see them and try to photograph them. Last night I was in Davis. I don't know if you guys has anybody been to the bat flyout in Davis? 1, 2, okay. It's an extraordinary experience, not that far, and 350,000 Mexican free-tail bats roost under the I-80 overpass. They have their babies there. They show up in June from Mexico, and every night 350,000 fly out right before or after sunset, and the peregrine falcons show up, and they feed on them. And it's funny because last night they were a little late. I was teaching some people, and where are the bats? Where are the bats? And the peregrine falcons showed up, and they're flying around wondering the same thing. So birds are, I don't know how, but they're smart. They know they come there. They're doing something else, but they know around sunset this is where they go to get an easy meal. And it's really quite gross because what they do is they rip the head off and keep the head and throw the body away. But, nature, it's like, it's like bears and, salmon. So, a myriad of plants and foliage. If you have a small backyard or a patio, you can look online and see what plants attract birds. And you can just have a small little garden set up, and you'll be surprised what will show up there. And of course, hummingbird feeders don't attract just hummingbirds. They've come back for 3 years now. These bullock orioles, beautiful male and female, and they love my hummingbird feeder. I've put out, food specifically for them, they're not interested. They want the sugar water from the feeders. So, and of course, hummingbirds are wonderful. So, okay, my next category is how, and this is important. The best thing I ever was taught is stop, look, and listen. Sounds so elementary, but it's so true. If you walk into an area that you've decided is where you're going to shoot that day and there's a good chance of seeing something, stop, just remain silent, look carefully, and listen. And that's a great way you'll start to see things you didn't know. That's where you'll see a brown creeper on the bark of a tree, or you'll hear a woodpecker, or you'll see some bugs, lizards. It's a really good exercise. People that move to, whatever you do that works for you is great. It's an individual thing. But for me, the more I stop, look, and listen, the more I try to blend into the environment, not meaning to get too ethereal, but the more you become one with the environment, the more you don't identify yourself as a crazy human being, the better I think the results will show. One little thing, don't look wildlife in the eye. I promise you this is so true. They interpret that as a threat. So if you come across an owl and they're staring at you, look away. Just stand there and look away, and they'll become comfortable. And when you look back or look out of your peripheral vision, they'll often be preening or yawning or looking up at the sky or something. So, but yeah, don't do things that the birds will interpret as a threat. And that's one. Pay off the research that you've done. You know you're in a good area at the right time of day with the right equipment. You're wearing muted colors. There's a lot of debate about that. You're not going to see me in full head-to-toe camouflage because I think it's, I don't know, just not me. But don't wear a bright pink shirt or bright red, yellow shirt either. If it's something that's olive green or brown or black or, that kind of, you blend into the environment a little bit, it's better, for obvious reasons. So that's how. Stop and hold still, and as I said, and use all your senses to take in what's around you. Listen for the crumple of leaves and branches underfoot, a singing bird. I mean, that's where, if you're walking around, you may miss a singing bird and you can identify where it's coming from. Be patient, be still, be silent, and stop, look, and listen. That's kind of what my book, Silently into the Wild, a lot of it is about that. Because I think that really increases your success rate exponentially, I mean by quite a bit. 5, know your wildlife. This goes back to the research and being passionate about it. But I cannot overemphasize how crucial it is to educate yourself on wildlife habitats. It's so, wildlife habits, it's so important. If you are interested in a species, let's say bald eagles, and you learn everything you can about them, when do they nest? How do they nest? What are they what harms them? How do they react to situations? There's so much research. Cornell, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware, is a great resource to learn about birds and their habits. There'll be maps of migration, when they migrate, where they migrate. But learning their habits, feeding habits, what their prey is. Like for instance, hatches on, a lot of it is not talked about that much. Like if you're by a river and you want to shoot kingfishers, which are the bane of my existence and most nature photographers' existence, or swallows, and you're waiting patiently, and all of a sudden it's silent. All of a sudden birds are all over the place, and you wonder why. Well, if you go around to where you're looking into the sun and it's backlit, there are hatches where little nymphs, bugs that are on the bottom of the river, will rise, and their wings open up and they fly. And these hatches happen all the time on rivers and streams. Fish know that, like fishermen fish with nymphs that mimic that, fly fishermen. So I always check for a hatch, because right after a hatch, the birds that can see everything, they appear out of nowhere. So that's their time to feed, and the hatch may last a minute or 2 minutes, and then it's done. So like, if you've ever seen swallows, like any swallow building a nest under a bridge or whatever, and all of a sudden they'll just take off, all of them, and they fly up in the air and they swirl around, that's a hatch is happening, and they're going to go eat and then go back to what they were doing. So it's really important to do your research. Again, it takes a lot of effort, and if you're not passionate about it and you really don't love it, I mean really love it, maybe it's not for you, and I don't mean you as in anybody here, but just parenthetically speaking. Moving water features really attract birds. If you got a fountain with moving water, either in your backyard or somewhere in a park, it's great. Sometimes it doesn't work because there's no cover near it. What's ideal is a water feature with moving water and trees or thick bushes adjacent to it. And they'll see the water, they'll fly in there, they'll look around, make sure there's no danger, and then they'll fly down and play in the water. So moving water features are great. You can get very inexpensive fountains for your backyard on Amazon for under $200. You plug them in, they're made of, synthetic material, and the big water spout comes out and the water drips over, and I've got one of my patios, and birds love it. So let's see here. If combined with your experience, if you can predict what birds eat or what mammals eat, when and where they will be, their migration patterns, the time of the year they can be found, the better. The more you know, the more wildlife you will find. I go to Yellowstone every year, and this year I went in May, and it's not a secret, but after hibernation, the bears and their cubs come down from higher elevations to lower elevations. And as the snow melts, it reveals carcasses of bison and elk that didn't make it, and they come down to feed, and the whole chain of life, there's den with wolf pups in it, which was really exciting. And unfortunately, last year, bad news too, 20 wolves from a very prominent pack were killed by hunters because they left the border of the park into Montana, led by the not my favorite person, governor of Montana, who, bragged about shooting a wolf, and it's just terrible. But, everybody's doing their best to keep them. They have radio collars, a lot of them, and they try to, any way possible to keep them in the boundaries of the park, because they're going to lose their lives if they leave, and more likely than not. But with a place like Yellowstone, it's real easy. Like in November, the elk rut, which is terribly exciting. And I do some workshops there, and it's like clockwork. You know that the males are going to be, you see them sharpening their antlers on trees, and they're like razor sharp, and they're white on the tips, and then they're bugling, and two males go at it. I mean, it's really extraordinary. It's nature at its finest, and that's when the moose have their full antlers before they lose them. They lose them every year. And so just knowing the habits of, not everybody's interested in every wildlife, but if it's songbirds or owls or bears in Alaska or, some of that's easy to predict. You go with a guide, a workshop, and, but around here, you can do it. The more you know, the more wildlife you will find and photograph. I guarantee it. If I'm lying, you call me up and I'll make it worth your while somehow. Food sources. That's all they do, is they eat to live. I mean, if you think about raptors, why people admire them, if they hunt every day. If they don't eat, they die. I mean, some of them can last a day or two, but They don't have a choice. That's their supermarket. So if you know what animals eat and where that prey source is, you will have a higher success rate. Look for, as I mentioned, look for insect hatches on rivers and lakes. Trees with berries, funny about that, cedar waxwings love berries. And cedar waxwings are really cool, you'd agree, right? The beautiful birds. And a lot of times they're flocks and they're frequent the top of trees, a big flock will fly in. But if there's berries down low, they'll come down low and they'll ignore everything around them to snack on them. And that's where you get some really great shots of shoot at a high shutter speed and they're hovering and they got berries in their mouth and it's red berries and beautiful yellow waxwing. And if you get the light right, if you're shooting in the right direction, you get some really nice shots. I wouldn't say they're unique shots, but they're beautiful shots. That's food sources. I've got one sentence here for the last item, number 7, because there's not much to say about it, and that's patience. That is the biggest attribute you can have. Sometimes a bird sitting on a branch is not so exciting, but if you can, if it get it right when it flies, lifts off, or you get something maybe a little magical that tells a story, or another bird flies in and there's a confrontation. Just the other day, I was shooting some swallows sitting on a fence post, and one was kind of preening, and another one flew in and landed real close to him, and they both got a shot of their mouths open, like, what are you doing? Why are you next to me? Who are you? So, if you can tell a story, it's better than a bird sitting on a branch. So, patience, just wait. It's not for everybody. I'll tell you, I have infinite patience because I love it and I want to get that shot. So I'll sit there for an hour with my eye to the lens, thinking up all the tricks I can to fool myself that I'm okay doing it, and waiting for that moment, and guaranteed if I look away or just reach down to scratch my leg, there they go, right? So patience is a great attribute. So just to sum up, do your research, know what you're shooting, know where they are, it's all available, respect them, go into the woods quietly, go to a wildlife refuge quietly, try to blend into the background, be patient, but if you kind of follow everything I went over here, and I'm not saying it because I said it, it's things I just learned, you will be surprised the wildlife that you will capture. So that's it. How to find wildlife. Any questions?
What speed are you shooting at when you're shooting at the raptors? What speed do you shoot at?
For flying raptors? I try to be no lower than 2,500 shutter speed, 2,500. It depends, it's a good question, depends on the bird. Like sandhill cranes, tundra swans are kind of slow, so you can get away with 1250 and it'd be razor sharp. A duck is like a blur. You better be at 2,500 or 3,200 if you're shooting a duck or a swallow. So it depends on the species, but as a rule of thumb, even for a bird that's perched, that's preening and moving, higher shutter speed is better. Of course, you need more light for that. Now, if you have some of the wonderful attributes of modern equipment is the ability to handle higher ISOs. I remember cameras I used to shoot with above like 800, it was like Grain City. Now I have a Z9, which I love, and it's I was shooting bats that was pretty much dark at 12,800, and there was not that much grain, and if you use topaz or, it really is quite a nice image. So are you guys familiar with topaz? Everybody knows topaz. Lifesaver, right? Denoise and there's two programs I love, Denoise and Sharpen. and they're artificial intelligence. So they have basically programmed millions and millions of possibilities into the program. And very rapidly, when you load a photo, and it works, I don't know about other programs, but it works as in Lightroom, as a pull down, it will look at your picture and make the right amount of correction to take noise out of your picture without flattening out the pixels so much that it gets that funky look. You don't want to overdo it, but you want to get as close to perfect in the camera as you can, but if you're off a little bit, Denoise is a great program to help you take noise out. Sharpen is even better, I think. If you got a shot of give you an example, I got a shot in the bay of an osprey diving, grabbing a fish. And even though I was 20 frames a second, the shot that I loved was just a little bit, it was good, but it was a little bit off. I don't know why, operator error, a little bit blurry. So Topaz Sharpen couldn't tell. It sharpened it right up. So those are two programs. They're part of the Creative Suite, and they're cheap. I mean, it's like $20 a month or something like that. And they work in Lightroom, or I think they also work in other programs. So I'd recommend those. I will say I try to do everything in the camera. I don't like over post-produced pictures. You can tell it's more of a challenge to try to get it right. Because if you have the right exposure, the right shutter speed, the right aperture, et cetera, there's just a satisfaction and a quality to it that, I don't have to do anything to this. I love it the way it is. So, any other questions?
You suggested looking for a hatch. You suggested looking for a hatch. I have no idea what to look for. What would I look for?
Bugs, but you have to, if the sun is behind you, you won't see them because of their gnats. They're tiny. If you can imagine what a swallow eats, they're not going to be big. So if you're near a body of water, position yourself where you're looking into the sun. And that way, when the bugs rise off the water, they start as nymphs, which are like caterpillars under the water, and then they become butterflies when they break the surface. And you will see thousands and thousands of bugs flying around like a cloud, and that's where the birds will go, ooh, a meal. So
that's right off the water.
Yeah, it's harder to see, but if you're looking into the sun backlit, you will see them for sure. They're just millions of bugs just all over the place. And then it disappears because the hatch is over. So that's all happening on the bottom of rivers, the circle of life with algae and amoeba and all sorts of things, and bugs and eggs and hatches, and then they rise and fly and die. I mean, it's just the marvels of nature. And all species are connected. If it wasn't for that, the birds would they'd have to work harder to find other things to eat, like things crawling around trees. But the hatches are a great, easy source because they just basically fly with their mouths open like a whale does with a school of menhaden, I'll tell you something interesting about insects. The bats at Yolo Bypass, one bat, this is verified by scientists, not making this up, one bat eats the equivalent of 30 grocery bags of insects every night. What's that?
Thank you.
No. So there's
No, I was just hoping to see, I'd love to see some of your work.
I'm sorry, I'm going too long. Any other questions, or we're done? Okay.
One more question.
Yeah.
So you talked about camo. I've never put camo on my long lenses. Do I need to?
Equipment is so expensive that it's worth putting protection on them. Because if you want it for resale value and just general purposes, you want to take care of a lens that costs $13,000, right? it just so happens that most of the cover for lenses is camo. You can get black, I think that's it, or you can buy camo. Realtree is the company that makes covers for every lens imaginable. And so that's why.
Is it that effective?
No,
No.
no.
How about jackets, camo jackets and things like that? They're going to see you moving
I'll
around.
say this, it doesn't hurt, but if you wear muted colors, I mean, I wouldn't go out and spend thousands of dollars on camo, no way. I don't wear it, but I'm not going to go out in a yellow or red or bright color shirt because I think that does hurt. But if you wear, get an olive green long sleeve t-shirt and this, and just muted colors, that's, as long as you're quiet, not making noise, not waving your arms, that's what's important, not what you have on. But that's my opinion. Some people, you see them and they look like, Joe Pro and, I don't know. So I'm sorry, going to them. Any other questions before? Okay. I'm sorry? Yeah, I'm sorry. And I just randomly grabbed some work, so I don't even know what's there. Did you find the file? Okay. And I'll make a couple of brief. Oh, there, okay.
I shared it for the folks at home. You can just.
Okay, this is a little different resolution on the screen, but this is something Bob shoots much better than I do. Bob Free shoots the best hummingbirds I've ever seen. And this is an Allen's that, there was a water feature and it attracted them, and so. Next. I think it's wider than this. Is that the whole image? Okay. It was dark except for this one little bit of light that was just shining through, and just as luck would have it, this egret flew in right at that moment, and I just shot away, and when I got home I said, wow, that's pretty cool. So it's an example of where the bird doesn't need to fill the frame to have an effective shot. I call an atmospheric shot, Next, please. Osprey was flying by with the trout, and it's much sharper than it looks on the screen, but it's, I thought it was a good example of the way ospreys' talons are made with one facing to the rear so they can, grab a fish, and, not so good for the fish, but next. When I was looking, I always check holes in trees, I call them. I was looking at this one, and I saw movement in there, and I wasn't even sure what I saw. So I put my tripod up, and I framed it and waited, and this happened about 5-10 minutes later. Northern flickers, beautiful. I love this shot. And they're totally unaware that they're being watched, which is great, Next. So, if you see, that's how I found Western screech owls doing the same thing. I think I've got a shot of him later. This is up here by Marysville, north of Marysville. They call District 10. And I love shooting the tundra swans in the winter. They're very skittish. It's a good time to shoot from your car, which makes a great blind, by the way. They don't know what cars are. And, a beanbag in a car is like a good thing. But if you can stay out of sight, you get some cool shots of these beautiful birds. And this is an example of knowing where they are. Their District 10 is known for thousands of tundra swans every fall. I mean, not every fall, every winter and early spring. So you're guaranteed to see them if you go there. Just north of Marysville on 70. So very close to here, I think. Not that far, yeah. Next, please. Okay. This is a mandarin duck, which are not native, but they were brought here from England years and years ago. And there's quite a few around now in the Central Valley and especially in Southern California. Now, the reason I put this shot here is there's nothing retouched here. This is right out of the camera. And this is just like a little photography thing. If you can get color in the surrounding trees, if it's fall or there's an interesting pattern, it makes for a much more interesting shot. I mean, it would have been nice if the water was just plain green and there was this incredible looking duck, which almost doesn't look real, but it was autumn and the leaves were gold, and it's a good little hint in the fall where the birds are real active anyway. Try to get one close to the shore and you get a little added bonus. Go ahead. Okay, this is a least bittern, which is terribly exciting to me because they're one of the hardest birds imaginable to find. And to get a shot of one is even better. And I spend a lot of time doing this, but they're just remarkable. They never come out. When they come out of the reeds for 3 seconds, they look around and they go right back in. I don't know, they eat in there. They're very elusive. And this is the time of the year to find them. The best place to find them is quite a ways from here. It's the Los Colinas ponds in San Rafael. There's a family of least bitterns there. Hard to find, but if you go and you are patient, you'll see them flying from group of reeds to group of reeds. And the Yolo bypass has them also, except no water where they frequent. So they don't, Anyway, really unique birds. Next. This is an example, though, of the time of the year. If you're looking for least bitterns any time but June, July, forget it. But if you know that's when they're breeding and they have to go out and hunt, So that's Mount Diablo in the background looking west. This is down near Lodi. And always have a wide-angle lens with me because you never know when you see something like this. And this, again, was not retouched or anything. It was just what it looked like. So go ahead. An example of patience. This eagle did not look anything like this 2 seconds before. It was just sitting there. And then it just shook itself and scrunched up, and the light was early morning, beautiful light, and I liked it, So you click away and you look on the computer and say that's more interesting than just sitting on a branch. Bob and I saw a lot of eagles, didn't we? Every poll. There was a woman who was with us that got a shot up by Klamath. It was looking down a hill, kind of a curvy downslope, and there were telephone poles, and there were a bald eagle on, 7 poles? 8 poles in a row. There was one eagle on. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. And that's the only place that there's hundreds and hundreds of eagles. It's, aside from Alaska, there's no other place like that in February. Okay? We all know what that is. Lazuli bunting. This is an example of birds that will be migrating through. And a lot of people don't know that such an exotic, beautiful bird can be right in your backyard. And he's a chubby, healthy-looking one. It's a male. And, you know, they're warblers and songbirds. They don't stay still for long, so you really have to be in the right place. And when you see movement, you shoot it, and you wonder what it is later. So you get a lot of song sparrows, but you also might get something like this, which pretty. This is a great gray owl up in Humboldt County, which was kind of rare. There are also quite a few in Yellowstone and the Tetons, but they're a northern owl, Minnesota, north of the California, Oregon area. But every once in a while, one will show up and spend a week, and word spreads, and a 6-hour drive later, there he was. So magnificent, magnificent creatures to see in the wild. Near my house, just a curious fox. And again, this is just keeping your eyes open and noticing, knowing that there are fox and bobcats and mountain lions, and, you know, just listening and looking and having a camera, you know, ready to go. And when you see something, you know.
Was this a flash fill?
No, it was just the light. I'm not a flash person, but yeah, thank you. Eye light is great. Just middle of the day, what I was talking about, you know, if you find some flowers and just sit and watch, see butterflies and bees, and, you know, this was not with the macro lens, so it could have been better, but just an example of what I was talking about. Bobcat, same deal as the fox near my house. Just you hear something, you remain still and you look, and there he or she was. Didn't stay for long. I think she was still moving, and I was on single point for something, so it was not the best shot, but beautiful animal. I just love wildlife, so diverse. So if their pupils are not filling up the yellow part of their eye, you're okay. They're just curious now. If they were fearful or you were too close, that black part of their eye, the pupil, would be large. So if that were the case, I never would have taken the shot. But they were just, I was quite a ways away on a long lens, 600 millimeter with a 1.4 TC, so they were just looking at me. And it's terrible how endangered these burrowing owls are. There was a place near Davis that had 7 burrows. I'm a member of the Burrowing Owl Preservation Society, and I'm a coordinator between Fish and Wildlife Enforcement, and, you know, people do such stupid things. They walk up to the burrow and they get out of their cars. It's just horrible. People are just so ignorant, and they don't care. And anyway, there were 7 active burrows. They fledged all sorts of, and now they're all gone. Every burrow is abandoned. So it's really sad. Not a macro either, just playing around while at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, waiting for it's kind of fun, just something to do. A lot of times, even with weather apps, you get up and you go, you spend 2 hours driving or whatever, and it's like really ugly and gray and foggy, and people are like all grouchy and they want it to be perfect and golden light. But that doesn't mean you can't get some interesting shots. So you just stay there and you make the best of it, and I think this is pretty cool. It was really gray and foggy, but birds have to eat even in the gray fogginess. So. Anybody know what this is? No? Nashville warbler. You'll see them any day now. Next. Short-eared owl. This was after dark. Again, he wasn't really frightened. He saw me. I had a lens leaning out of the car, which is about 50 yards away. But there's no direct light. It's maybe 15 minutes after sunset, and I lowered my shutter speed way down. I think I was like at 40th or 20th, and it cooperated by staying still. So I was able to get enough light for an exposure and have it be relatively sharp with low ISO. Parents have no respect for their kids when they come back to visit. This was a nest I monitored and banded eagles for the Forest Service for years, and we knew because this is the male. The female when you see a juvenile fly in, and if they're not one of their offspring from a year ago or 2 years ago, they will just tear after it and try to hurt it. I mean, when they're nesting, they have no tolerance for an intruder. But if they're their own, like the mom was going, like, I'm upset, but not that upset. Well, the dad didn't feel that way. And he didn't want to engage in a battle. He just wanted it to leave, right? It's their instinct. They had eggs in the nest. But you can see the size difference between a male eagle, which is smaller, and what's obviously a female juvenile eagle. Nature. And this is like watching an eagle nest when nothing was going on, and then all of a sudden the juvenile showed up. And this is a very dangerous, beautiful grizzly bear in the Tetons that I think is just so beautiful. Incredible character in its face, but boy, you sure don't, you got to respect them. These are bats in Davis. Ooh, am I doing that? Okay. They're pretty cool creatures. And it's a challenge to get them low enough. So self-explanatory, but I highly encourage it. It's a load of fun. It's great for kids, and people bring chairs, go a half an hour before sunset. They have picnics, and they sit there, and the bats just come out right in front of you. The bats, you see families show up with stuff to eat, little chairs, and they bring their kids, and there's a docent there that has brochures on them, and it's a wonderful thing to see. Everybody should see them at least once. And I mean, 350,000 bats, they just stream after stream for like 20 minutes. It's unbelievable. And the peregrine falcons, it's quite a sight. Sandhill cranes, we're lucky. You don't have to go to El Bosque and freeze your ass off, excuse the language, 20 degrees and windy. But they're all over the Central Valley if you know where to go. And Woodbridge Road, north of Lodi, is at the Eisenberg Crane Reserve. I'm sure a lot of you have been down there. Fog is a big issue, but you know, you just do the best you can. And when it clears up and get some flight shots, the light was still pretty here. I can't remember if this was morning or afternoon, but they're amazing birds that haven't changed much in millions of years. What's not to like about photographing short-eared owls? I mean, just look at them. They're remarkable creatures. And we're lucky because in December, from December to March, they show up in this area. I don't know where they come from. I've tried to find out, but they're kind of scattered all over Northern California. And they nest on the ground in grass. I'll tell you a quick funny story. One time I went to an area that I'd been successful shooting them, and I pulled up in my car, and it's just an endless grassy field like the foliage you see in there. And I put my tripod up and put my camera on and was just prepared to wait. And I walked up to a barbed wire fence where I was going to shoot over the top of. And as I was walking to the fence, on the other side of the fence, about 10 feet away, 6 owls just flew up. They had been just spending the day there, and they just flew up in 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah, you can go. Just a portrait of a really fierce-looking bald eagle. You can go fast. I don't want to. Prairie falcon with its prey behind it. They're wonderful birds too. They're hard to find. There's a ridge up near Klamath called Pterodactyl Ridge. It seems to host a lot of prairie falcons in the winter. No idea why, but a good place to find them, and they're very handsome. This is a long-tailed weasel. Vicious animals. I mean, they just are vicious. Here's, I just like the feathers on this sandhill crane. Doing their thing. Shouldn't be much more. Elkhorn Slough, we've all been there, right? Mom and baby, there's something else. Tell a little story. Merced at sunset. Sandies. Got lucky, not a composite shot. I don't know why the moon is that in focus. It's really not, but this was at Llano Seco. And it's interesting, but not great, but interesting. More sandies at sunset. Brown pelican, just 1,000 shots for every one that looks like this. But they're incredible. One of my favorite ducks, the hooded merganser. Boy, they unique looking. They'll show up here in December too. Should be a beautiful migratory warbler.
No, Western Tanager.
Adult pelicans with the yellow heads and the white and hanging out. Cinnamon teals in flight. I love shooting ducks. They're a challenge. They're really fast, and they're by you in a second. So barn owl. The light was real pretty. Boy, they unique looking, huh? Here's another, it was another eagle doing his preening thing. Just beautiful light. I thought should be almost done. Foggy, rainy, horrible morning, but you're there. It's kind of interesting, right? This is a blue morph snow goose landing. Only when you get a south wind can you get a shot like this. Otherwise, you're getting butt shots. So if you want to shoot, which I love these kind of shots, check the weather. If you see it's a south wind, you go. Whatever he was saying, he was calling. Pretty. Osprey, lots and lots of osprey along the coast, and I would imagine everywhere there's a river. White-faced ibis, that when you catch them turning to the light, their colors are, and again, this is not retouched, enhanced in any way. That's what they look like. Only a certain time of the year when they're in full breeding. Again, a lousy morning, black-naked stilts. The sun was blaring through the fog, kind of, and that's what resulted. Middle of the day. You can rip through this. This should be almost over. I won't go into this a lot, but I'm a very scientific person. I'm not woo-woo at all. People that say animals don't have emotions and feeling don't know what they're talking about. Sorry. I like nighttime photography too. Found this old fire truck, Milky Way. Set it on a timer, and go get in the shot. An eared grebe, they're pretty cool looking in breeding plumage too. It's got to be the end of it. Checking all cavities in trees, western screech owl, very hard to find. I couldn't believe it when I saw him pop out. It was like, don't go away, stay right there. You can go on just midday. I like the colors. You can go on. This was at the Crane Preserve before sunrise. First shot I could get, very high ISO. Vermilion flycatcher. Really cool. Preening. Prehistoric looking. Lots and lots of these guys are coming. This is a mating ritual where you see the one female in the middle surrounded by 5 males. They're showing off for her, and at the end of the flight, they'll fly around for 10 minutes and then she'll pick one. Liftoff. F-13, 400 millimeters, very, very little leeway to get all the birds in focus on a shot like this. You got to do it right. It's got to be the last one, no? Sorry, I didn't. A barred owl. Up here, you have them. Down where I am, you don't. But this one found a chicken coop, much to the dismay of the chicken coop owners. Beautiful ducks. gotta be the last one. I'm sick of looking at my own photos. Okay, this is cool. Peregrine falcon in a stoop. It's on a cliff, and it's 200 feet. You just go, where is he diving? Into the rock? No, he was diving at some seagulls down below. But boy, did I get lucky on this. I was shooting the one to the left, and she was like, what? That's the father. And that's what they do. They're incredible. That's an eclipse shot. Here's an osprey feeding an offspring with some very fresh sushi there. And this is two recently fledged, no, they hadn't flown yet. They were walking around on the pickleweed. Two juvenile peregrine falcons being sweet with each other. All right, yay. Applaud because it's over. Sorry it took so much time, I didn't know.
It's fine.
Any final questions? Or?
Well, I think what we'll do, thank you, John, that was fantastic. Yep, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a short break, let everybody stand up, stretch your legs, and then when we come back, John has, not only did he drive here and do the presentation, he's also graciously agreed to be one of the two judges tonight for critique. So it'll be John and I'm sitting here looking at you, I'm drawing a blank. Janice Rosner sitting right in front of me. So they're going to be our judges for this evening. So we're going to take a quick break, if you would, about 5 minutes, and then I'll give you a signal and we'll come back and look at our members' images for this evening.
Hello.
Yeah, it's one of those fancy ones where you can't read it. Yeah, I mean, it's like
Well, I have great life on. I can read it.
It's funny, I had my eyes examined just, about a month ago. And so I'm waiting for the doctor to come in. So I go over and I look at the bottom manufacturer, I forget what it's this big, right? Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to take this and I go, yeah, manufactured by some company. He goes, what? I said, yes, right to the bottom. Sorry.
Check. 1, 2. 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2.
Okay, folks, we're getting ready to start the critique. Please take your seat. Thank you, Bob. If you could drop the lights, that'd be great. Okay, folks, so we're going to start the second half of our meeting tonight with announcing the winners of last month's critique. So for the guests and newer members, each month we have a critique that is in club members enter 2 images, if they want to, into any one of the 16 photo categories that the club has. Then after the meeting, you get to vote on your favorites from each category. So what you're seeing tonight is these were voted as the favorite by category. So starting with assigned subject, last month was street, and the winner is Alejandre by Frank Blocksberg. Am I in the way here? Okay. Best abstract, entitled Under Hawaiian Waters, Looking Up, by Tom Quinn. Best architecture, entitled Unsafe, by Kathy Triolo. A tie for architecture. This one's entitled Bridgeport Newly Restored Bridge, by George Pelpel. Best architecture, The Fixer Upper, by Ellen Davis. Best fauna, Resting Kestrel, by Gary Emanuel. Best flora, Magnolia Blossom, Black and White, by Robert Arnold. Best natural landscape, Palouse Pastoral, by Kathy Triolo. Best night photography, Light Painting, Menorca, Spain, by John Sievert. Best people, Greek Priest, by Ed Sylvester. Best photojournalism, Me Ranch Cattle Roundup, California Route 25, by Brad Oliver. Best creative, Musey's Past Ghost Present, by Douglas Hooper. Sorry about that, that was Hussey's. Best manipulated but realistic, entitled I Can Hear Thunder, by Dave McClellan. Best black and white, Lost in the Fog of Time, by Tom Quinn. Best color, Ananda Tulips, After a Good Rain, by Henry Goodwin. Best phone, Reflections of the Day, by Mike Oitzman. And that completes a round of applause, please, for our winners from last month. Congratulations to all of them. I'm now going to turn the program over to our judges. Again, thank you to John and to Janice for serving as a judge. It takes quite a bit of work to prep for this. And there's no sound. There it is. It takes quite a bit of work to be a judge, and so thank you to both of them. John, as a guest judge, is seeing most of these images for the first time as he sees them tonight. So we appreciate him willing to be a judge for us, and I'm looking forward to see what he has to say. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the judge, and Mike Shea is going to be the reader of the title images tonight.
Rachel, or anybody there? For those of us on Zoom, we're just seeing.
Am I on? Our first category is assigned subject, and that was light and shadow. And the first image is early morning, spring falls.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that this was a really good example of the assigned subject, the range of light and shadow. And I thought that the photographer did an excellent job with now not blowing out any of the highlights while still keeping some deep blacks. The more that you look at this image, the more texture you see in the water, which I enjoyed. I put it up on my big screen at home to look at it, and I also liked the subtle rainbow effects in it. Compositionally, I think that the framing of the light on the diagonal makes the image more interesting.
The photographer was Frank Blocksberg.
Okay.
Light, shadow.
This is a good example of a photo where backlight really works. The streaks of light give you a forced perspective that brings your eye in to where the focus should be, and that's on the setting sun. The color looks natural to me. A lot of sunsets, they look unnatural, but they're kind of muted and pastel. There's detail in the dark clouds, and the highlights are not blown out. I think it's a really nice sunset. It makes it more three-dimensional and interesting. You get the feeling there's a lot of depth, a lot of distance between where the sun is and where the foreground is. So good job.
Photographer Bill Hopman. Next image, Merced River starburst and shadow.
Certainly, the light is the subject of this image with the starburst taking center stage, and I like the placement of the starburst with the light rays coming over the river. On my computer, the right side of the image with the trees actually was a bit muddy, and this is less so on this screen. So I was going to say, I took it into Photoshop and I lightened the muddy area with a simple curve, and in my area it kind of brightened the whole thing and gave a little bit more life to it. But I thought that it was interesting and still gave the idea of the rising sun. So nice.
Photographed by John Sievert.
I had something really quickly. The starburst, for those that are interested, it can be really effective if not overused. The way to do it is F22. If you position your camera so the sun is you're just seeing a tiny bit of it from a leaf or a barn or a tree, and you shoot it at F22, you'll get a starburst.
Next image is climbing higher.
Really interesting subject choice. Kind of first thing I thought of is, what are those objects? So any photograph that asks you a question, I think, is successful. It did seem to want something else, maybe leaving one out or a lower angle with a lighting effect, but I'm nitpicking. It works the way it is. It's different and thought-provoking.
It was photographed by Mike Oitzman. Our next image is candlelight in the dark.
So I like the placement of the candles and the side view of the woman and her expression. I find intriguing. I wonder what she's thinking. I'm assuming that the woman is the subject of this image, but the candles are much brighter, and in my opinion, they kind of stole the show from the woman. I think the portrait has good possibilities, but I would play around with the light. I also find some of the shadows on her face to be harsh, which in my opinion weren't as flattering for her. So, and there also seems to be a light overhead that causes this band on her forehead. So I think that, that this composition with the candles and this person and the expression, I like it a lot. I would just play around with the light a little bit.
It's photographed by Jonathan Beth. Our next image is Tucson Bench.
I appreciate having to look twice at an image to be sure what I'm looking at. And this shot requires the viewer to write their own story. It's just nebulous enough that you don't really know what you're looking at. So my story was that this is in Africa and there's a lion outside the netting in a safari location. That's what it looks like to me. So I like it.
Photographed by June Anderson. Next up is the model in between takes.
I love the soft light on this image and the use of shadows, which add interest and draw the viewer in. In my opinion, an interesting composition with my eye traveling from her bright hand to her face and then down to the soft light on her costume, keeping my eye in the frame. I thought that the tonal range in this image was good and it was well done.
Photographed by Grace Farag. Next up, Angel Shadow.
I think this is a strange image in a good way. I'm not sure the grain works as well as a blurred ethereal look would. Kind of where the highlights were a little blown out and it was blurry and maybe more silhouette, as well as some muted color. This kind of has a fairy princess pastel-y. It calls to me for like some muted pastel colors. But all in all, the subject matter and the objects are really interesting, so it's not bad.
Photographer was Robert Arnold. The Man with No Shadow.
So I find this image intriguing for a couple of reasons. I wonder what the heck that they're pointing at. And of course, you don't know here, are they looking at birds or is there something over there or what? And then I thought it was also kind of comical that they appear to be dressed alike. And the other intriguing thing that I found was, well, what the heck happened to that guy's shadow? And then, so is there something behind him? And so I spent a lot of time with this trying to figure out what's going on in this image. My only criticism, and this is just, I'd like a little bit more space under his shoes. He's kind of falling off the bottom of the frame. That's a small thing. And also the other thing is the second man there, the back of his head, there's pretty much a lot of blown pixels, which would make printing this image an issue.
The image is photographed by Jeff Allstatter. Here we have a busy wall.
My first thought was, who designed this house? I'm not sure. It's great. I think this is an excellent example of showing texture in a photograph. And that's really, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, the lighting, I mean, I don't know what else you could have done with it, but to me, it's texture, and your eye goes to the red tiles and the brick and the window, and it's just kind of like all about texture. So,
Image by Gary Kartstaffner. Next up, Market on the Mekong.
So in my opinion, this is a good use of light and shadow. My eye wanders around the detail in the produce, though. Because it's in the foreground, I do wish that the produce in the foreground wasn't in shadow and was lightened up a bit. I know that markets are difficult to shoot in because of their variable light, but I did play with this, and the shadows in the foreground can be opened up a bit. I also opened up the shadows on her face, as she has a really interesting expression on her face. You can tell she's contemplating her choices. So I think that the composition is good, and I love the flow of the fruit. I would just open up the shadows in the foreground and the shadows on her face a little bit.
The image was by Bernadette Sylvester. Next image, Native Beauty, Chiapas.
I like this photo. The shadow on the wall is wonderful. The colors are wonderful. I love the colors. The only critique I would have is I think the woman is too far to the right. I would have framed it so there was more air between her arm and the edge of the frame, where the demarcation line between the rust and the yellow maybe came down on the other shoulder. If you could keep the shadow in the shot. But she's very pleased to have her photo taken, and I like her. You know, she looks happy, and it's nice. Just a little more air on the right.
Photographer was Ed Sylvester. Next image, Budweiser Brewery, sorry.
Well, I sat with this image for a while. I went and refilled my coffee cup, came back, kind of stood back, and I found this image to be really intriguing. And as far as what is going on with this in terms of the light and shadow, I wondered if it was somehow a composite and flipped, but I don't know that. I was examining the light, but any image that gets me thinking like this and looking at it like this, I think really has something going for it. Technically, I thought that there was a full range of tones. None of the whites were blown and the blacks weren't muddy. So I really found this intriguing and appealing.
The image was by Michael Quinn. Our next category is abstract, and the first image is, I know the pieces fit.
I love this. Maybe my favorite. I love the blues, the coolness of it, the design, the framing, the way the diagonal, I mean, it's just, I think, in terms of the assignment, abstract, it's perfect. I don't have any criticism of this. I love the veiny rock. It's kind of like looking, and the silky water, looking down. I think it's technically very good to achieve that silky water and still have everything in focus in the foreground. Very nice. I like it. I would frame this and hang it.
Well, I'm sure Chris Schiller will be happy to hear your comments. Next up, wall ivy.
I thought this was a really nice composition there's a lot of repetition of the curves and the horizontal lines. The small arch in the foreground is repeated in the arch of the ivy, and the horizontal lines in the vents repeated in the horizontal growth of the ivy. There's a lot of subtlety, I thought, to this image, and in terms of the colors, it's got just a couple of colors in it, and I really felt like the photographer found something really interesting and did a good job of putting it together. My only criticism is that it didn't seem to be sharp, and nothing seemed to be sharp, and I wondered if it was the small file size. But other than that, I think it's a very interesting image.
Thomas. Next image is conch shell.
I think I have an affinity to abstracts because I'm so terrible at them. This is really nice. I knew it was a conch shell right away, but the crack in it and it looks lived in or ancient. It's really nice. The detail in the shell, the white amoeba-like shapes, the pinks and whites and the light blues and greens, it's very nice. My only criticism, I don't know if these are water or oil spots, but the spots on the left are distracting to me, and I think this would have been much better without them. They may very well be natural, but even if that were the case, it would be a simple remove, especially the dark black one in the red and the one in the white below it, but because my eye went there. But aside from that, it's nice. Like it.
The shell was photographed by June Anderson. Next category is architecture, and our first image is Blue Mountain Fixer.
So along with the old buildings, the use of infrared in this image gives this a kind of otherworldly feeling that I think works well with the old buildings. It's a high-key image, and I did play around with adding some darks to the image, which in my opinion added more texture in the clouds and in the wood without detracting from the infrared effect. The photographer also might want to play around with the point of view to deal with the horizon line, cutting the image in half and cutting through the buildings the way it does. It's just a small thing, but overall, I think it's an interesting image, and it makes me want to know, like, where is this place? And I like the old wood, and I like this image.
It's photographed by Ray Lurchie. You can probably recognize Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, first thing when I saw this, having shot the bridge a lot, is where did they take that from? Marin Headlands? No. Skyscraper in San Francisco? No. Airplane? Maybe. I don't know. But then I decided it wasn't important. It was cool. I don't know about the boat. I think it would have been, my eye went to the boat and it was like, why is it there? I mean, this is about the bridge, and I don't think the boat adds something to it, so I don't think it ruins it. It's a nice image, but that's the only comment I have. And I wonder if there was an oil spill. They have that buoy around. They have that thing around the base, and then there's looks like stuff in the water there. So I wonder what's going on there. But beautiful bridge, beautiful image.
Photographed by Jerry Thomas. A short distance from the bridge is Alcatraz.
So this image projects power and dominance, which is appropriate given the subject of Alcatraz. I thought that the composition was very effective with the powerful diagonal line cut by the horizontals, but almost the prison wall horizontals. That's what those made me think of. And the tower soaring from the ground to the sky. The tower seems to be all about imposing strength through mass and dominance. And then comes along the bird, which I think is perfectly placed. I don't know how you got him to fly there, but good job. The bird is smaller in all ways, softer, does not have these hard lines, but it's completely unfettered by this massive tower. I think that this is another image I had up on my computer for a while, and I think it's a complex image that is technically well executed, but also tells a profound story.
The photographer was Gary Emanuel. Category fauna. The first image is What You Looking At?
Boy, they're funny looking birds, aren't they? It captures the bird perfectly. It wouldn't have done so if you had the whole body. You could have even, I don't know what lens, but close up of the face even would have made for a really interesting portrait. It's a little soft. Looks like it was shot wide open, maybe because of light. But the difference between the head, which is back a little, and the body's maybe a stop. And as far as the background, I don't find it to be it works. It's kind of like bokeh, but I wonder if you turn the camera or moved, not turned the camera, but moved, if maybe there was a more interesting background. But you don't want it, I wouldn't want it to be too busy because your focus should be on the bird. But so I take that back. The background's fine. That's a unique look at a unique bird.
The photographer was Ray Lurchie. Next image, the pelican.
So this is a nice image of the pelican in flight. I like how the photographer got the catch light in the eye and the wing position just behind so that the eye isn't obscured. I know that the eye was probably obscured in other frames just because of the movement of the wing. There's a good range of tonal values. The bird is sharp. The feathers are visible. My only criticism is that I'd like to see more of a relationship between the bird and the background. And I don't know if it was because the background is just gray and this was converted to black and white, but it appears that the bird is placed there but doesn't have a lot of relationship with the background. It's a small thing, but that was kind of how it landed in me.
The image was by Grace Farrig. Costa Rica Hummerfest.
Well, pretty much a perfect photograph. I mean, the background is gorgeous. I love that lavender. The birds, the parts of the birds are in focus that should be. The slight blur in the upper bird's wings shows motion to me, which I like, and everything else is sharp. And my only suggestion would be a little less air on the bottom of the photo. It seems like it's being pulled to the top. So if it would be more in balance if maybe, just about you split the difference from the bottom of the tail on the lowest bird to the bottom of the frame. But aside from that, it's really nice.
It was photographed by Deanne Donnelly. We have bird drama from my driveway.
So how lucky for this person in their driveway.
No kidding.
So clearly, there is something going on between these birds, which draws me into the image. I wish I could see more of the bird in the upper corner, but, he's clearly harassing the bird, in the lower edge. I like the implied diagonal line created by the placement of the birds and the point of view of the photographer that did a good job in getting the head of the lower bird, which really creates the story. With all the pine needles creating the challenges, the photographer had a real challenge in photographing these birds, and I think the photographer did a good job. When I opened this image on my screen, the upper bird was not in focus, and it's a big bird, and it's a big area to not be in focus. So I don't know if that was, a true issue or a matter of the file size. This image certainly has a story to tell, and I would like to see what comes next.
Photographer was Eleni Prusa. Here we have 5 hunting eagles.
Is this a composite shot? No. It's not. That's it's pretty amazing. It's technically very good because they're all in focus. The depth of field is perfect. I don't think it was shot wide open. Maybe F11, F13, I don't know. It's really different and interesting. I don't think I have a criticism. I mean, if this was shot live, the birds are going to do what the birds are going to do. So to go vertical and frame them, so you got all of them in the frame, it's just well done. And again, technically, I see detail in the white head. It's tough to shoot eagles because they're half dark and half white, and especially if you look at the tail, you see detail in the whites, and certainly see details in the wings. So it might be a touch grainy, But it is a little grainy, but all in all, it's really different and nice. I'd love to shoot that, yeah.
Well, this was shot by the person sitting to your left, Janice Rosner.
It was snowing.
Oh, okay.
That's the grain.
Janice says it was snowing.
And that was the quick response to its.
It's a composite, no.
Looking for lunch.
So this is a nice, sharp portrait of the hawk. I like the catchlight in the eye and the fact that the bird isn't too obstructed by branches, which is often the case. It was very nice of that bird to land where it is instead of behind all those bare twigs sticking up. But that said, I have actually no criticism of the bird. The bird is sharp. The image is well exposed. I would have asked the bird to land someplace else where the background wasn't so busy, but, you get what you get. Yeah.
And the photographer is Bernadette Sylvester. Look, they are photographing us again.
Two can do it. Yeah, I mean, they're beautiful birds. It's nice. A little, there's an interaction. You wonder, are they siblings or mated or boyfriend, girlfriend? Or I like. Technically, it's very good. The bokeh is very nice. There's a really nice separation between the birds and the background. You can imagine with a busy background, this would not have been nearly as good. It's framed nicely, and if you look at the light beaks, there's enough detail in it without it getting muddy, and the colors are really nice. The blue head, and it's a for what it is, it's a lovely shot.
Well, it was photographed by one of the tour leaders, David Wong. Now, I may mispronounce this. Oropendula in another
Oropendula.
Costa Rica rainstorm.
I love Oropendula.
Did I say it right?
I guess it's an Oropendula. Yeah, I love those birds. I think I love the position of the bird in this image, the implied diagonal and the simplicity of the background in terms of the branch, which then doesn't compete with the raindrops. The photographer did a good job of keeping their shutter speed up so that the raindrops didn't become streaks. And it's technically difficult because it's raining. These birds live in Costa Rica. It's probably dark. So you've got to keep your ISO up, you've got to keep your shutter speed up, and you have to have enough depth of field to get this bird. So it was, had some technical challenges there. I did some experiment with lighting the bird, and there's a lot of beautiful detail in this bird, which I think isn't apparent in this image, and I would maybe encourage the photographer to lighten up the bird a little bit, not the background, but just lighten the bird a little bit. The histogram, when I took it into Photoshop, indicated that the image is really quite dark and would probably print really dark and would need to have some lighting if this is an image that the photographer wanted to print. I think this certainly tells the story of the life of an Oropendula in Costa Rica.
It was photographed by Ann Westling. Now we're moving to flora, and our first image is fish hook cactus.
I mean, this screams desert to me, and I think it's possibly a little overexposed. Maybe a little more contrast would have, the image looks a little flat to me. Maybe it could have been a little more three-dimensional with if it were, a couple of stops down. But I love the colors, I love the cactus, and the composition is nice. I imagine there was some moving around before the photographer settled on exactly this, and I think the decisions were good. It's a nicely nicely designed.
Photographer was Gary Emanuel. Next image, wild geranium bloom.
This is a sharp, detailed portrait of the geranium. The technical aspects of the shutter speed and depth of field are such that the entire flower is in focus and easily identifiable. I took this into Photoshop, and the histogram is up against both the right and left wall. So I made some adjustment of both the lights and darks, which I thought brought out more texture in the image. So that might be something the photographer would want to play with. For my taste, the center placement of the composition is a bit static. This works well for botanical identification purposes, but I would encourage the photographer to not only take this view, but to change their point of view and try other views of this images of this flower as well.
Photographer was George Papel. Chit-ilpa flowers.
Having seen this for the first time, my comment is that I would have cropped it quite a bit. I think the background detracts from the flowers, and I think it would have been easy to take those highlights on the flowers, which are kind of overexposed, down a little bit. So if there had been more detail in the white and you were cropped in tighter so that your eye was on the flowers, there's too much background there and it's kind of gets busy. But I think selective cropping and a little work on the highlights would have made it better. But overall, it's a nice photograph of beautiful flowers and buds.
The flowers were photographed by Jeff Alstetter. Quiver tree fascination.
This is actually my image. This is a high-key image of a quiver tree from a recent trip I took to Namibia in the quiver tree forest.
Cool.
Thank you.
Moving now into natural landscapes, and our first image is Klamath Falls sunset.
It's nice to see a sunset without a million colors. I mean, it's natural. You got the cool blues of late in the day without the sun, and I like the depth in this shot. The framing is nice. You have, the foreground weeds look a long way from the mountains in the background. So it's very three-dimensional, and your eye kind of wanders down the water. So it's nice. I might have added a little more contrast to it to make it a little more distinctive, but it's a different sunset. I like it.
The sunset was made by Frank Blocksberg. Next image, Beek's Bright Super Bloom.
So, well, this is a beautiful image. It looks brighter on this screen than it did on mine at home. But anyway, I want to have a picnic here, a nice glass of wine in these flowers. I think this is well composed. There's a pleasing placement of the elements in the screen. The heavy boulders on the right are nicely balanced by the field of lupin on the left. The photographer had enough depth of field to have all elements sharp, and the tones in the sky complement the tones in the foreground. I just think this image is really well done technically and compositionally, and I don't have any particular criticisms of it.
And that photographer was Henry Goodman. Our image is Witch's Pool.
I found this really interesting. Usually when you see silky water, what I call silky water, which is really well done technically, that's kind of the focus of the shot. along with what may be surrounding it. But here you have this almost strange alien-looking creature in the front. I don't know what is causing that, and I'm not sure it works that well. I think it has to be intentional because it's so prominent, but not knowing what it is. And I mean, my eye goes to the rock, which is really nice, nicely exposed, and I might have cropped this differently or raised the camera up a little bit. I don't know what was up above, but technically, the photographer knew what they were doing in terms of the silky water, which is, requires doing it within limited boundaries to get that, especially during the day. So where, it's the opposite of what you normally do. Here you want to take light away. You want less light, not more light. But I'd love to talk to the photographer. I'd love to know what their objective was here.
And that photographer was Chris Schiller. Sunset by the lake.
Oh. I'm missing one. Anyway, okay. I'm just talking to myself. My notes for this one are missing, but I did write them out. So I loved this image. I'm assuming that this is Mono Lake out kind of to the, to the east, where this doesn't have a lot of the tall, anyway, it doesn't matter. I love this image. I love the repetition of the colors. I love the repetition of the horizontals in it. It's a really peaceful image. It's very well exposed. The tufa in the front are sharp, and the sharpness continues on through the image. So technically, I thought that the photographer did a really good job on this. The only thing that I would change about this, and speaking of the reclamation, you probably have to talk to them about it, is I don't like that strip of land there in front of it, and the water level needs to come up. So I think the Bureau of Reclamation needs to do something about this because, I know just like all of our other waterways, Mono Lake is low. But we've got these nice reflections in front. I don't know if the photographer could have gotten to, moved a little bit to the right or left and gotten away from that brown piece of dirt there. That may be the best that the photographer, could do. I don't know, but I really liked this image a lot, and I thought it compositionally and technically it was well done. Just that strip of dirt.
The photographer was Suzanne Hamilton. This image is named Dune Grass.
I like this. You could have taken this, a lot of people would have just taken a wide shot of this and sand dunes and seagrass, but focusing on the path that goes up, curves up and over the hill, like what's on the other side of that? Is that the ocean? So I like the way it leads your eye up and over, and the colors are beautiful. I like the fact the sky is kind of blown out because if it had been too blue, it would have flattened the image out, so it adds a lot of depth. And the yellow is gorgeous and really golden. So this is a nice way to look at this little path through the dunes.
The dune grass was photographed by Patricia Levitin. Here we have hiking the canyon.
Okay, what a way to make someone look small or the rocks look massive. I loved the detail on the rocks on the left. I thought that was just stunning. And the contrast of the rock mass with the hiker works well. I did take this into Photoshop. The histogram is up against both the right and left walls in this image, so I did some adjustments which added some contrast and I thought brought out even more detail in the rock on the left, so the photographer might want to experiment with that. Also, this is a really little thing, but my eye is drawn to the blue hat, which stands out in an otherwise kind of monochromatic image. And I experimented with desaturating the hat, which in my opinion was more consistent with the rest of the image. And it still left the contrast of the person and the mass of the rocks, but it didn't draw your eye so much to the hat.
And the image was made by Bill Hopman. This image is called Rolling Off of El Cap.
Wonder where that is. I mean, what's not to love about this? You're at golden hour. You're in front of a magnificent, iconic landmark. The moon is remarkably in focus. The soft light in the sky. My only quibble is that the moon is balancing itself on the edge of the cliff like that, and I'm not sure that works well. Maybe I don't know, but I don't know which way it would have appeared to move, but you could have like moved a couple of steps to the right and had it, kind of over. But aside from that, I mean, it's this beautiful image. What a place. And it's sad what's going on there right now.
The image was photographed by Tom Quinn. Our next category is night photography, and the first image is Radha.
Well, so this image draws me in. I want to know where this is and what it is. What's Radha? Why are there the security cameras? What's up with all the smoking signs? I mean, what's happening? Why is the window obscured? What's on the other side? This is an image of strong vertical lines that conveys a sense of firm boundaries, but also it draws you in at the same time. Technically, it was sharp. It is sharp. I took it into Photoshop, and the histogram is up against both sides and indicates that the image is really dark. So on here, it doesn't look like that, but I think that if the photographer was going to print this image, they might need to adjust the light in this image, because I don't think it would look, there wouldn't be the vibrance in the door that you see on the screen. Yeah, that's it. I like this image. I want to know where this is, what's going on.
After the meeting, you can ask Ellen Davis.
Okay, I will.
Here we have Piling On to New York City.
Well, this is just stunning. First time I've seen it, I'm seeing it. I mean, everybody's thinking the same thing I am, I'm sure. It's, composition-wise, it's just fantastic. The perspective, the way the light is shining down the rows. I don't even know, what are those things, pylons? Anybody know what those are? I don't know what those are. Pilings? Piers?
Pier pilings.
Pier pilings. Interesting, they're so close together. But really nice look at New York. The starburst, the sky, the gold on the water. Boy, that's nice. I'd be proud to take that shot. The trees on the right take up a good amount of space, and I imagine there's nothing that could be done about that, and that maybe could have been lightened up a little bit, which would serve to not draw your eye to it as much. But, nice shot, really nice.
And the photographer was Mike Oitzman. Kilauea or Mount Doom?
So this really drew me in. I was very impressed with the composition and the river of lava leading to the top of the volcano. Looking at the terrain, I don't imagine the photographer had an unlimited options of where to stand here. So I thought with what the circumstances were, they did a very good job with this composition. I took it into Photoshop and I was impressed with it. The photographer did a good job of handling the really range of light in this scene. The lights aren't blown, and while the scene is primarily dark, the darts aren't muddy, and you can see a lot of the detail and the cracks in the cooling lava. There's really a lot of texture to look at in there. I thought it's a very well composed and excellently executed image. As a bonus, I like that whatever that is that's behind the mountain where the lava's blowing out, that looks like Darth Vader standing there. And I'm like, what's that?
That's Gollum.
Gollum, yeah, really. I thought that just like it was the icing on the cake. So I think this is a wall hanger. Nice job.
Image was done by Tom Quinn. Glimpse of the dark side.
Well, that is very cool. I don't know what kind of bat that is, or how you got this image. That's fantastic. I mean, it's coming right at you, which, depending upon what camera system you're shooting with, is a real. You have to be very confident in what your focus choice is. It's really just sharp and
that's 42.
beautiful. Really nice. Black background works.
67.
Lots of detail in the lighter part of the wings, and it's very well done. Technically well done.
The maker was Ann Westling. Now we're in the people category. The first image is Dancer with Egypt 80.
Okay. This is a beautiful, lovely, joyous capture of this dancer. Although it's a still image, you can just feel the movement and the exuberance of this woman. The image is really well exposed. The depth of field works well, keeping the sharpness of the dancer and blurring the man in the background, but not blurring him so much that you can't see his expression. I like that the brightest light is on the dancer's face, which keeps my eye coming back to her. I think this is a really nice performance image.
And that was my image, Mike Shea. Next image, Proud Mama.
I love travel shots of indigenous people, giving them their due, especially, when someone's happy, beautiful child. Reminds me of, there's a famous photographer, Phil Borges, that does this kind of work, and it just made me think of him right away. Really nice. A little overexposed, but you know what? You see these people, and you can't really pose them or get them to go stand somewhere else, and the light is what it is. So I take that into account, and I say well done.
The image maker was Brian Dunbar. Here we have Contemplation.
So this image is composed of strong, hard vertical and diagonal lines juxtaposed against the rounded smallness and softness of the woman, which creates this study and contrasts. In my opinion, all of the elements in the scene work well together. The placement of the woman low in the foreground accentuates her smallness and vulnerability in relation to her environment, as does the cane laying by her side. Her pensive, questioning expression draws the viewer in and creates mystery as to what she's watching and thinking. In my opinion, this is a really powerful image.
And the image was made by our president, Rachel Rosenthal. Now we're in the travel category with the first image being a New Zealand creek.
I love the angle of this shooting up. If they were going for the silky water effects, I think I imagine they bracketed quite a bit, because you usually do on a shot like this, because you're not knowing exactly what you're getting through the lens. I would have liked to seen maybe a longer exposure, what that would have looked like, especially the water down below. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. And, but, you know, that's, wow, you want to be in that place. Lovely.
For was Gary Kartsnagger. Sorry, Gary.
Sorry, okay. I'm just going to interject for just a moment here. Sorry to disturb the flow of our judges. We are running a little bit late this evening, and so this has been absolutely fascinating, and I hope you can stay. But also know if you do need to leave, that's okay, and please just slip out the back. But anyway, just wanted to let you guys know. Thank you.
This image is titled Rhonda Church Outside the Castle.
Okay. This image is sharp all the way through with good depth of field and nice detail in the stone structures. I have a thing for texture and old stone and wood and stuff. The title of the image suggests that the church is the subject, but except for the steeple, and it actually looks different here than it did on my computer. The buildings of the church are darker than the light buildings in the foreground, and I thought kind of distracted me away from what the subject was. And looking at the histogram for this image, it doesn't have many lighter tones, and I thought it could use some contrast. I took it into Photoshop and played with the simple curves adjustment, adding some contrast and lightness. And then it had, I thought, a little bit more liveliness, and the front facade of the church was brighter, which I felt, you know, then made it more prominent and spoke to it being the subject of this image. And to me, it says study and contrast between the old stone structure and the newer buildings. I liked that piece of the composition there.
The photographer was John Sievert. This one's titled Laundry Day.
You know, it's we see a lot of these shots when you travel around Europe and Italy in particular, or you know, Bulgaria, places like that, and it's lovely. You get a peek into their everyday lives. She's hanging out her laundry, which is that's the way they do it there. And I think that the colors of the buildings, the whitewashed, you know, old buildings are nice. The only thing I would have done differently is I would have framed this differently. I don't think the bottom where the doors halfway is cut through, I would have, you know, zoomed in a little bit to the top of that door where the focus was purely on the woman hanging her clothes out. But really nice.
The photographer is Rachel Rosenthal. This image is titled Family Time, Nepal.
I like these images that seem to give us a sneak peek into the inner lives of others. In my opinion, with these doorways, it requires the viewer to go through the series of doors to see into the children and the family as a nice metaphor for the process of getting to know someone. I find an elegance in the simplicity of it all, the overhead wires, the hanging laundry, and the children sitting there with their mother. I really like these kinds of photographs because it's these kinds of scenes which are visible all around the world that speaks to the universality of the human experience.
The photographer is Brian Dunbar. Here we have Meteora Monasteries, Greece.
Wow. I like the framing. the 16 by 9 framing. I think that really works to get all of the structures in there. Wow, it's just a lot of, you're looking at a lot of miles, and I would have liked it to be a little more contrasty, I'd like to see some more darks in there, the hills, and maybe it would help the rocks stand out a little bit, but, and the sun is getting blown out a little, but I'm sure there's detail in there in a RAW file if it was shot in RAW. So I would have done a little work, 10% work on it, but boy, everything is there for the making of a really nice landscape shot. Well done.
And it was done by Ed Sylvester. A new category is Creative Fantasy, Anything Goes, and the first image is Dug by the Bay.
Okay. So I'm assuming the creative aspect of this image is the placement of the subject or Doug in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. I think this was a good idea, and I like the overall placement of the subject. Although he seemed to be a bit large in the frame, this kind of gave it an advertising quality to it, and I wondered if this was like an advertisement for Nevada City Bike Shop. So, and the other thing, the subject appears to have been taken on a bright, contrasty day with the bright sun coming from behind the subject. The image of the bridge is taken in fog with no bright sunlight. So this impacts the believability of the image for me. However, I think the portrait of the biker is a good start with a nice pose, though the bright highlights on the subject are blown. I also like the moody fogginess of the bridge. I just don't know that they work together, these two pieces here, but I think this is a good concept.
Creator was Dave McClellan. This one's called Outer Limits.
Groovy. So need some Jimi Hendrix music. Wow. What am I looking at? I don't know what that is. That's fantastic. I mean, it's really cool. I don't know what it is, so I can't say anything more than I love the colors and like, what are you looking at way back there? Is that a place or a door or a fun house? Or something Jerry Garcia saw years ago? I don't know.
Yeah, it's an acid flashback. Yeah, by me, Mike Shea.
Outer Limits. But seriously speaking, it's beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, so that was my photo. This is called The Wild Side of Jackson Meadows Reservoir.
So this seems to me to be a magical fantasy where the deep blue waters turn to gold and the stars swirl overhead. In my opinion, the photographer did an excellent job with managing the color in this image, which I think could have easily gotten out of hand, but it didn't. And I like the way that the colors in this image work together. The image is believable in this kind of fantastical way. I think it was well thought out. One suggestion would be that on the histogram, again, the image is really dark. And I lightened the midtones, which I thought brought out the beautiful colors of the water and sunset more. But I like this image.
This was created by Douglas Hooper. Now we're into black and white, other, and the first image is Saltdale, excuse me.
I tend to be very critical about black and white because I think it's often used gratuitously, just like I think I'll just dial the color out. And I think in reality, shooting for black and white is a lot different. It's not really a comment on this photo because I don't know what the intent was, but it's an interesting image. I see the rail track and the railroad track and the sand and the car above it with the black hole in it. So it's a creative, unique way of looking at what could be a mundane shot of a car sitting on rails.
And it was taken by Ellen Davis. This one's called The Eye.
Well, so this is a point of view you don't get every day. I love the sharpness and detail of the eye and the choices that the photographer made to narrow the depth of field to the eye and the immediate area around the eye. This keeps the focus on the eye while still providing some context for it, and it keeps the viewer's eye within the image. And there's a ton of detail visible, like in the eye itself. I was just like looking all over this thing. It was so cool. It's amazing how seeing just a small part of an animal like this can tell a powerful story. And although there's not a tooth in sight, I don't want to meet this guy.
David Wong. The Mist of Kelfden.
Example of black and white used the right way. I mean, this photo should be in black and white. It's moody, it's mysterious. Color would have added nothing to it because you have this black shale granite and the fog. These are all monochromatic naturally, and I think I like the contrast. I like black and white where it's not washed out. There's detail in the highlights of the fog, and I think the rock is really well done, well exposed. Just great detail. Love the way the eye goes to the V. I don't usually like photos where the focal point is in the center, but it would not have worked off to the side. This is the way it should have been, so well done.
Well done by Douglas Hooper. White and black portrait.
So what a sweet portrait of these girls, and I sat with this portrait for a good while. I think regarding the technical aspects, I think the shallow depth of field that keeps the focus on just the faces works well in this image. I love that they're leaning in toward each other as this conveys a feeling of closeness between them, and the catchlights in their eyes draw you into their faces and hold you there. I also like the earrings, which are a subtle way of showing their connection. The only criticism that I have is that the earrings are bright and can draw your eye away from the girl, so I would just tone down the bright spots on those earrings. Although there's an obvious difference in the races between these girls, what's more obvious are the similarities between these two friends, and taken a step further, the universality of childhood and of the human experience.
And the photographer was Robert Arnold. So we've got 10 more, and now we're in the color category, with the first image being Stamp Mill.
Interesting image. There's all sorts of antique machinery, farm equipment, industrial equipment laying around that lends itself to photography. And this is a good example of that. It's just nicely framed, strong verticals. The trees in the background, in a way, are a little busy for me. I kind of see this as just kind of like a washed out background, or I don't know that the depth of field works well here, but the interest of the equipment makes this successful to me, and the background is minor. This is an interesting shot.
The image is by Patricia Levitin. Independence Day fireworks.
So in my opinion, this is a really well done capture of the fireworks. The photographer did a masterful job of selecting a shutter speed that would show the beautiful falling patterns of the fireworks without having them be too blurry or run together, which can be difficult. It's a hard thing to predict when you're the falling speed when you're shooting fireworks, and you kind of have to experiment with it. The photographer also did a good job with the overall exposure, keeping the fireworks bright but not blown. And it certainly is easy to blow fireworks. Overall, I think this is a really excellent firework image, and it's very nicely done and, nicely composed.
And it was taken by our projectionist, George Papel. Quintessential Tahoe.
That sure is. There's nothing remarkable about the shot in terms of time of day or the action, but it's a good atmospheric shot of the natural surroundings, the snow-covered peaks. The only there's nothing wrong with this shot. The only criticism I have is that the strip of mountains is like right in the center. I think maybe a little adjustment there, cropping out some of the water, maybe a different choice of lenses. So like a wide, this looks like a, 50 millimeter type shot to me, but like a almost not a fisheye, but a 14 millimeter lens would maybe have added a little more interest, but nothing wrong with the shot. It shows where you are and what's going on.
And the Tahoe was photographed by Eleni Prusa. Color carousel spin.
So this is a fun and colorful image that conveys all of the excitement of a summer fair. But with all of the empty chairs, I wonder if it's telling a story of our recent, modern times. The image is sharp, and the depth of field has all of the chairs in the ride sharp. I enjoy all the color and the bright blue sky, although I'm bothered by the right border and some of the chairs being flung out of the frame. Perhaps this could be avoided if the photographer moved their position, as I do think that that's an issue for this image.
The image was taken by Jonathan Beth. Here we have Spring in a Vase.
It's a beautiful still life. Great choice of pots. Great choice of a table. Love the tulips. It's very brave to have the flowers in the background be in the same color palette, warm, and not take the easy way out with a much more contrasty background. But it's nice. It's really nice. I don't see anything wrong with it. I like the little grouping, that kind of the flower pot is off center. There's enough air below the pot to the bottom of the frame, and if the intent was to shoot a nice still life that was technically well executed and well done, I think they succeeded.
And it was created by Suzanne Hambleton. So we got 5 more, and we're in the phone category, with the first one being Driftwood Shipwreck.
So, in my opinion, this is a strong composition with an interesting subject. There's, that you can just look at that driftwood. I like the diagonal line of the shipwreck and the rocks in the background that kind of mimic the color of the seaweed with the tones of the orange. There's a lot to like about this image. The only thing that bothers me about this image is there seems to be a lot of color noise throughout the image, like in the clouds there seem to be a lot of image and haloing around the rocks. But I really like the composition and the subject, and I think some noise reduction would help this immensely.
Taken by Dave McClellan. St. Monaz Windmill, Scotland.
Where is Don Quixote? Boy, my initial thought is it's pretty amazing what phones can take, right? I'd say, not having been there, the color accuracy of the sky, the detail in the clouds, the color accuracy of the flowers is really good. I don't know that with a DSLR or a mirrorless, I don't know that you'd get any better. Maybe a little bit in terms of noise, but for a phone shot, looking up the hill like that, I mean, it's beautiful. It's just well done.
Taken by Craig Orson. Here we've got Montana sunset.
Oh, so Montana is one of my favorite states, and what a gorgeous sunset this is. In my opinion, this image does tell the story of rural Montana with the lines of ranch equipment and the rows of fencing, not to mention the old buildings. I like the strong diagonal of the foreground that leads me to the diagonal fence and back into the frame, into the buildings in the midground. The colors are nicely rendered and believable, and on my monitor weren't overdone, which is easy to do on a sunset like this. This is a really nice image of a gorgeous summer night.
The creator was Larry Lefman. You have Ko-A-T and Curaçao.
I would like to see what's around it. If it could, I would have shot this wider. What's on the cropping on the right doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There's he's looking at something there, and I kind of want to know what he's looking at. So I don't know that this is a vertical, but I think it maybe would be better as a horizontal and a wider shot, because the subject matter is, of course, interesting. What an incredible bird and mammal and tree, but that's my suggestion.
The photographer is David Nelson. Green and scarlet macaws.
Oh, so these are beautiful birds, and I'm always amazed when I'm in some place in the tropics that they just fly around like it's a normal thing for these gorgeous birds to be flying around. I just love the vibrant colors and the interesting patterns on their skin. The photographer did a good job with keeping them sharp and having nice feather detail, showing their eyes, got a nice head position. Unfortunately, the macaws didn't choose an easy place to photograph them. The background is brighter than the birds and busy, as is the stump they're sitting on, which all competes with the birds. To make the birds really stand out, the background needs to be toned down and be less prominent part of the image.
And this was also photographed by David Nelson. If y'all want to hang on for a minute, I'll turn the lights on.
You have a lot of talented photographers up here. I mean that. Some of the images were incredible.
All right, my goodness. I know we ran a little bit long, but I hope that we had a lot of great information tonight. Huge thank you to John for joining us tonight. Yes, give them a round of applause. If you want to see more of his work, it's still on the club's webpage. His website is on our homepage, so take a look at that. Thank you to Janice for being a judge, and thank you to Mike Shea for being the reader of names. So our next club meeting we're always the fourth Monday of the month. It's August 22nd, and you have until August 19th to vote for your favorites of the categories we just saw. With that, have a good night, everybody.